Hey everyone, look who I have here today. Jeff Arballo,
All
Final
right.
Cut Pro editor who worked on the documentary,
Scramble the
Scramble. I
Seawolves.
always want to say bring in the Seawolves. It's Scramble the Seawolves.
Scramble the Seawolves, yes.
Scramble the
Yeah.
Seawolves. And we're going to talk all about your workflow with that and see what else pops up in the chat for Final Cut Pro. Everybody wants to know what's going on with Final Cut Pro, Final Cut Pro.
Yeah.
We got our first comment. Scott Markowitz says, "Hey guys, how you doing, Scott? Where are you from, Scott? What part of the globe?" So I your documentary just basically is about a very specific time period and a very specific group of people who are over there in Vietnam, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, they were called the Hell 3 Seawolves. And I actually found the documentary because my father-in-law is a sea wolf. And he had asked me to go film something with his group. And I didn't know what they were about. I didn't even know who they were. And so my wife actually is the one that told me, "Oh, I think my dad wants you to go film this thing." So I did. And I honestly thought it was going to be just a group of his buddies, but it ended up
Right,
being
right.
600 people were there.
Wow,
And
600?
yeah, and it was a tribute to the 44 fallen brothers who didn't make it back from Vietnam. And when I started hearing the stories, I was just blown away. And I was like, wow, I've never even heard of these guys. Like, and then I started talking to him about doing the documentary, and that's kind of how the whole thing started. And I kept telling my wife, "Tell your dad I want to do a documentary about them." But I was also traveling around the world doing a lot of surf contests. That's what I did primarily, a lot of sports action, and so I had to kind of wait till I had some time to, um, figure out when I could do the documentary because I knew it was going to take a lot of time to put this thing together. So
Sure, absolutely. Well,
yeah,
let's talk about that. So, in generally, what kind of a time frame? I mean, obviously, it was years,
right.
but so how many years from the when you first started filming? Did you do any writing?
I didn't actually. And it's kind of funny how this whole thing came together with it because I don't consider myself a writer, but I did do writing later. Um, I don't even consider myself what I would say, a true editor because I edit all my surf projects, but they're short. They were,
Okay,
you know, um, whatever, 2 minutes, 3 minutes long.
sure.
And I do all my own editing. And I did do some surf documentaries as well. And I did my own editing, but I was also a teacher. And so I just did whatever I wanted because I didn't care who said what and what I should do and what I should film and not film and edit because I had an income and I didn't need to worry about that. But I ended up moving into doing this full time. And then that's when I started really going, okay, I got to really concentrate and make this stuff, you know, come out the way it should come out and make my work better. And, but yeah, it's a great story. And it's just the whole process of how I got getting into it and then deciding how each thing was going to play out. And like I said, I wasn't a writer, but as you start to do it and you become, um, when you're working with an independent crew, you
Right.
decide you really take on so many hats, and that's what ended up happening with us.
Well,
So,
let's start with this was the 1968 until what time frame? 670, 71?
well, so what really happened was they were 66 is kind of when they started testing it with a group of
Okay.
guys, and then it became official in 67 where they
Okay.
decided to bring in the Navy because they had originally started with the Army, but then they brought in the Navy guys and they said, okay, let's bring in the Navy guys because these Navy needs to work with Navy because this is really what they call the brown water Navy.
Okay.
And their main goal when they first started was to rescue what they call the PBRs, which is the river patrol boats. And if you've seen Apocalypse Now, then you kind of know the story about the PBRs. Those are the guys that were going down the rivers and getting ambushed and stuff. So they were getting killed at an incredible rate. I think it was like one of every three guys was dying on these PBR boats. So they put this squadron together, and the Army kind of they ended up teaching these guys the basics. But the Navy guys were what they call instrument trained. So that's why they said, oh, these guys could fly at night. They could fly in bad weather, and they can go anytime when these guys call them. And so that's what ended up happening. They came in and they just did an amazing job and saved thousands of lives. And then pretty soon they became so good, they started saying, hey, let's have them do insertions with the SEALs, Special Ops, Green Beret, Army guys. And that's what they ended up doing. So anybody who called them, they just went and rescued them.
Huh.
Yeah.
So this obviously was, all your footage was originally film, right?
Right. And that was the cool thing that we did with this is we had most of the film most of the movie that you see is, I would say it's about 85% of original film from the Seawolves.
Okay.
And a lot of it is even their going out and doing their practicing shooting the guns and everything. And so we took that and we added that into the documentary, and it really, I think it gave it a different feel, because most Vietnam documentaries you watch today, you kind of see the same regurgitated footage over and over. So we had 70 reels of film that we converted digitally.
Wow.
Yeah, 70 reels. And so that was a task.
Let's talk about that for a second. So what,
Yeah.
Did you have a house that did the scanning of the film for you, or?
We did. We took it to a place up in Irvine, and they took it all and redid everything. And they actually even fixed the color a little bit, because I actually looked into several, post house that could probably do something like this, or transfer houses that could take the film and transfer it, because we had 8mm, 16mm film. And I found some places in Hollywood, but they wanted, anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 or $20,000 a reel. And we didn't have that kind of
a reel.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So it was ridiculous. So they when I started seeing those prices, I said, wow, there's no way we can't afford that. That's not in our budget. So I ended up looking for different places. And then I found this place in Irvine, and they ended up saying, well, why don't you send one over? We'll give you a sample. And if you like it, then, we'll work with you. And so I took one, and I actually had seen the footage from the guy. He had sent me a copy that somebody else had made for him. It was pretty bad, but I sent it off to them, and I liked what they did. And it ended up being about, I think it was maybe 300 to anywhere from 300 to 350 to $400 or something a reel.
That's still a lot of money.
That's a lot. It's a lot of money.
Did you financed it yourself then?
We did. I will tell this. Here's a quick story. We actually had a deal up in Hollywood.
Okay.
And it really didn't work out, because they sat on it for a year. And my wife and I felt bad, because my father-in-law's a Seawolf, and right. About 4 of the guys that we had interviewed at that time had already passed away. And now I was starting to feel guilty, like, wow, these guys didn't even get to hear their story.
Yeah. So
I went up to Hollywood and met with these guys again, and they were working on a movie, and, hey, why don't you come and work with us? So I went up there, and they wanted me to wait another 10 months.
Wow.
So I said, I can't do that. Because I was actually even worried, for some of the guys that we had become really close with, what if they pass away?
Sure,
And
sure.
so what I did was we ended up basically firing these guys, and we ended up we wanted to originally go the PBS route anyway because we knew that was our audience,
Right.
and it was just something that my sister had talked to some guy. He asked to see my trailer. I sent it up to him. He liked it, and boom, we had a contract. Like, I mean, everything was happening quick. And then, like I said, it didn't work out. So we went back to through KPBS in San Diego and met with them. And we had a girl named Jody Seeley that I just, took a chance. Here's something that I will say to everybody is like when you're tired and you're thinking, oh, should I go do this thing or try to meet somebody, and you're like tired, go do it. Because it's those people that take that extra step. Those are the ones that end up doing it and making it. And that's what we did. I told my wife, hey, let's go. San Diego's having this thing
Sure.
that they're going to be talking about called the GI Film Festival. It's all about military films. Why don't we go talk?
Okay.
Yeah. Why don't we go talk to this girl? Her name's Jody. And so we did that. And then Jody said, oh, well, let me see what you have. I'll call you tomorrow and you can send me some stuff. And so I sent her everything. She said, wow, I really like it. Let me introduce you to, the guy at KPBS, and
Sure.
let's see if he likes it. And so we did that. And they called us in, and the next thing we knew, we were signing a contract with them.
And it showed at how many PBS stations?
It showed at, I want to say, over 350.
350 in 48 states.
In 48 states.
That's quite an accomplishment. Let me tell you, that's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, we didn't know. I did. Here's a lot of information that people could probably use. Is I didn't know the whole routine with PBS and going through that route. I thought once you got it in, it's going to play on every PBS station, but that's not how it works unless you actually go through PBS specifically. So there are kind of these almost like little channels that kind of work with PBS, and so you take your movie and then you pitch it to these different companies. And then what they do is they'll take it and try to get it onto the PBS stations across the country.
Okay.
And it's a chore and a half.
Yeah, of course.
Do that.
This project is incredible amount of work. I can see that. So you had to film scanned. What did you have it scanned to? What format and what size? Resolution? Do you remember?
I think we did. I think we tried to do everything like convert it to 16 by 9, and I think we tried to do. I think he did like a ProRes.
Okay.
I believe it was ProRes is what he tried to do, and then some he could only do like an MPEG-4.
Okay.
He could only do that, and then some he was able to do like a QuickTime format, and that just made it easy to bring it into Final Cut. And
right.
So we had both.
I worked at the National Archives for 8.5 years. I was a post supervisor down in D.C. And so I was down in Washington, but they had Archives 2 up in College Park, and they had a whole film preservation scanning thing. And that scanning process takes a long time because you're scanning one frame at a time in high resolution, especially if you're changing the format. If you're going 16, originally it was 4:3, right? The frames were?
Right.
And then you had to do that into 16:9, so you have to change it. So yeah, that whole film preservation up there was pretty amazing. They had multiple scanners, but the one that was a new one they had. Speaking of film scanning, they also have the Zapruder film.
Really?
The actual physical Zapruder film that was shot by Zapruder on Kennedy's assassination. They have, so the day of the assassination, the reason I know this is because the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination in 2013, was it? I guess it was 2013. All the press in Washington wanted to come in and film all these Kennedy assassination artifacts that we have, right? We have the Zapruder film, we have Oswald's rifle, we have the magic bullet, we have the 38 that he shot off a certificate with, we have the clothes he wore when he was arrested, the clothes he wore when he was shot, his wallet, all this stuff, and they wanted to come in and film this. Well, that stuff's under very tight security, and the archivist said no. However, our in-house AV crew will film it. That's me. We'll film it and give you a copy of our footage. So I got to see all of that original stuff. So there was one original and 3 copies made the day of the assassination. Zapruder contacted the Secret Service, said, I think I might have something. They said, let us go with you to get it developed. They went to get it developed. They got the original. They got one that was done with the correct exposure, one that was done underexposed, and one that was done overexposed that day. So there's one original and 3 copies. The archives has 3 of those 4. The other one is at the Dallas Museum, the Kennedy Assassination Museum in Dallas. They have the other one.
Wow.
Yes.
That's incredible. If you ever do anything on that topic, I'd like to be in on that, because
I was there. Oswald's rifle was right here, the magic bullet. So the Zapruder film is just so innocuous, because I guess it was 8mm.
Right.
It was just tiny. And when they take that, they leave that in cold storage. They take it out once every 10 years to check it, make sure it's, just to check things. And that was the year they took it out. Here's something that some people know, some people don't know. That film was spliced.
Really?
Yes. Not during the assassination footage. But at the beginning, I think it was Life magazine or whatever wanted to have a couple of frames for their on their cover. So it was at the beginning. When she told me that, I said, "You got to be kidding me." She goes, "Not during the assassination part, just at the very beginning, but there is a splice in it." Yeah.
Wow.
I have pictures of all that and film of all that stuff. It's incredible.
That's incredible. That right there is like, that's something that in your lifetime you got to be like, man, I was part of that. I never imagined that would ever. It just never entered anything in my life. I never thought about it. And one day, what happened was a friend of mine who was a photographer. He used to photograph this whole process, for the archives. Right. And he said to me, "Hey, do you want to go up to Archives 2 and see the Kennedy memorabilia, assassination memorabilia?" And I said, "What are you talking about? I didn't even know we had it. I didn't even know we had it up there. It's up there. It'll probably never be put on display, but it's quite chilling, to be a part of that. So I have that on film, and I guess they distributed the films to the local networks and stuff. But let's get back to your stuff. So you scanned most things is 16:9 and probably ProRes. Some of the stuff was MP4 to be compatible with Final Cut. Right.
So how did you start, once you got, that's 70 reels, each reel is 10 minutes to 20 minutes long, approximately?
Yeah. Okay. There's some reels that might have been longer. Maybe like 35, 40 minutes, I think. Okay. Bigger reels
or the same size?
Yeah. No, bigger reels.
Okay.
Bigger reels. Like we got in so many different sizes of reels. It was amazing. So then how did I go through all that, or is that what you were asking?
Well, I'm just trying to get the volume so when you started, you scan, once it's all scanned.
Right.
How did you organize that on your Mac, on your hard drives? Did you do it in some stuff in the Finder, organize it in folders, certain time frames, certain years, certain criteria?
Yeah, during that time, like, Final Cut was new in a lot of stuff. Hold on a second. My
Sure.
headphone came off. Final Cut was new with certain things, and so I was trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do this? And believe me, I watched a ton of tutorials to decide how I was going to do it, because
Sure.
I was honestly nervous, because now it wasn't like I was doing a surf film and it was,
Right.
you know,
Right. Sure.
just some surfers and stuff. This was history,
Yes.
and I wanted to make sure that we had everything, properly done. So what I did was I actually organized it before I organized it in folders before I ever put it into Final Cut, just to know what I was doing. And I had each guy's reel in a hard drive first. So I said, so if anything ever gets messed up, I could always just go back to that folder. And that's what I did first. And then as I started to bring it into Final Cut, because I didn't use anything else. I know there was a couple of other things, like I think they had just come out with maybe Kino, but it was fairly new, and so I didn't know enough about it to organize it in Kino or anything. So when I started bringing it into Final Cut, I remember I said, oh, I'm going to go up and I'm going to make an event for each of these and bring them all in each event. And I started to do that, but as I started doing that, what I kind of noticed was it seemed like it was building this huge thing, and I started going, wow, if I do that, every time I have to go find something, I'm going to have to click out of it, go down. So I thought, what if I did, and I didn't even know if this would truly work to this degree, because I had used the keywords before on surfers.
Right. Right.
And that's what really made me stick with Final Cut 10, was because surfing really kind of got me into that. I used to do these short contests it was like 3 days for contest, and they would want the footage back by like Tuesday morning, so that they could showcase it. So we'd go Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'd come home, and then I'd tell my wife, hey, I'm going to, sleep in the office for a couple of days, and and I would work like around the clock, and I'd get this out to them.
Right.
And when Final Cut 10 came, I started doing it. It was taking me now, what took me 3 days was taking me about 8 hours to do, because I was already meta tagging everything.
Right.
And I could bring it in and know where everything was. And I was like, wow, I can't believe how fast I'm doing this. So anyway, when I started bringing in this film, I started saying, well, what if I do these keywords as I bring it in, and just make like different keywords under one section. So now I can just click that lever down, and then it might be, let's say it was something where all the guys talked about Ben Toohey in this film. And what I would do is I would take that film and just categorize it, like keyword it.
Right.
And everybody who talked about Ben Toohey, no matter where they were and whose film it was, they went in under Ben Toohey. And then it was, let me do, a battle scene. Anybody who talks about a battle scene, it might be under this. Maybe we had a story called VC Lake. So if anybody talks about VC Lake, I'm going to keyword it under the VC Lake. Okay. And that's how I did it. And I didn't know if I was doing it right or not.
Well, yeah, anytime I'm talking to somebody who's doing a big project, I always want to know, it seems like everybody organizes in the Finder first. For whatever, if you want to do by days, by groups, by whatever, by the actor's name, they always organize in the Finder first. And then Final Cut has that one preference where you can create keywords from Finder folders.
Right.
So if you drag it in, it automatically makes the keywords for you.
Yeah, and I really didn't do that. I organized stuff in folders, but I didn't go through and then drag those folders in.
Okay.
Like I said, I did kind of brought everything in through Final Cut and did all the keywording. And, again, I made certain events for things that I knew, like, okay, this is this guy's real, and I'm going to put it under there. So that way I have it in two places. It's under the keywords. It's also in this separate event. And then I also have it on the hard drive. So I know that if it ever gets messed up, I can just replace it, throw it back in there. And that's how I did it. And I think what I ended up doing was, when I did it that way, it ended up working out really well for me, because in the end I was able to go find stuff like quick.
Sure.
And I couldn't believe how fast I could find the stuff. And I was blown away. I honestly was blown away. I was like, wow, this is working out quick.
What kind of hard drives did you use? Just USB 3 hard drives, or?
No, I had 2 RAID systems.
2 RAIDs, okay.
Yeah, 2 RAID systems. And let's see, they're the Promise, what are they? The Pegasus?
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah, I have those too. I have Promise.
And we had 2 of them. One was for the original data brought in, and then the rest was all backed up on it.
Yes.
So we copied everything over to both of them, and I think they're both 48 terabytes.
Okay.
Because I knew I was getting a lot of film and pictures. We also got in over like 5,000 pictures. So I knew I had to have some big storage to, get all that stuff in, transfer it in, and I didn't want to be worried about, oh man, I'm running out of room. So we just went big right off the start.
So we got a comment that says, "Hey, cool. Jeff uses a Zoom H6 as his microphone."
That's what they're taking away from this.
Yeah. It sounds good. It sounds really good.
Yeah, I actually just hooked it up when we did the little test run the other day. I said, let me try and see if I could hook this up. So I hooked it up, and then I kind of went through and kind of looked at some of the things. I said, let me try this. And it didn't work at first. And then I realized I was hitting one of the settings wrong. And then I put it in, and I was like, hey, let's try it, see if it works. And
absolutely. So your media, was it internal inside of a library or external?
It was, again, it was both. I had external, and then I brought it into a giant library.
Okay.
For me, I thought it was a little bit easier to just really keep it all in one place. Just for me, again, I did bring in an editor we had another editor come in and help out for about 7 weeks. And that was it. And so I knew that for me, if I just had one library, it was going to be easier for me than to go and try to search through different libraries to find stuff. And I was trying to make this as simple as possible.
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah, because I knew it was just going to be me most of the time editing. And I was really nervous, because I was thinking, although I've edited a 2-hour surf movie, it's different than having archival footage come in where you have to look at everything and go through it and tag it. And that took, I'm not going to lie, I think that took us almost a year to go through all that.
Right. I would think so. I would think so. So one of the things that I do, well, first off, I'm working on 2 documentaries right now, 2 or 3, 2 of them. And I keep all my media external. I organize it in the Finder the way I want. And I take the folders and import them into Final Cut, and Final Cut automatically makes keywords and collections. But I keep all those folders. I have one master folder. Inside my master folder, I have the library file, and I have all my external media. And if I have graphics, I keep them in a separate folder, and audio in its own folder. So everything is inside of one single folder. So the idea that some people say, well, if you work internal, you can take your library and just back it up. I can do the exact same thing. I take that master folder and just back it up. The difference is my library file is small. And I can duplicate it, make copies of it without duplicating all the media and stuff. So that's what I do. But one of the things that you were talking about, the media management of it. So you had, you worked on it for a year. One of the things that I've learned recently is I transcribe everything. Not for captions. Not for captions. You make a text file, a time code stamped text file, and I can go through and search the text file if I'm looking for things.
Yes.
And it works really, really well. Like the Final Cut Pro Radio podcast that I do. I usually have an hour and a half average, maybe 2 hours of audio.
Right.
And I do the text file, time code stamped. I can go through and search through certain things I want to talk about and then go there and pick things out. So I transcribe a lot of stuff now, even if I'm not using it for captions. That's a different, I have a caption file too, but that's not why I do it. Speaking of that, I wish that you could open up a text file natively in Final Cut. PDFs, Word documents, natively, not going to another application to try to do it.
We did use Transcriber. And, so we transcribed a lot of, I would say most of the footage we transcribed, because by the time Transcriber really came out, I think we were already halfway into our project.
Okay.
So from then on, we transcribed everything that we were doing. And what helped with that is I would go through and I would, take all the transcriptions, and obviously they go into Final Cut. But what I would do is I'd print them out as well. Right. And I would send them over to my wife, and my wife would go through and read something. And so maybe, like when you're editing and you're going through and seeing the footage every day, you almost start to become a little numb to it because,
absolutely,
you're just kind of, scrolling through stuff, and then I kind of heard that guy. And so what my wife would do is, while I was working on some part of the story, she would get it and then read it. And I would go through and I would kind of, scan through it. And then she might say, "Hey, I know you were looking to talk about, this something with the seals. Did you hear this guy's story? Because I read this." And then I would say, "Oh, I do remember hearing that." And then she would say, "Yeah, well, it's right here at this section." And so then I would just go click to that section. I'd be like, "Oh, boom, there it is." And, it worked out really well that both of us were doing it in different platforms, so that,
sure.
And that's what I would tell people is, don't just say, "Oh, we're going to just do it on Final Cut or whatever platform you're using." But, we're only going to look at Final Cut and we're going to get everything off that. No.
Right.
Take notes, print those things out, let somebody else look at it, because somebody always finds something that you don't see. And that's what we did a lot of. My wife would find a lot of these little gems that, because I think she's like a great researcher. I told her she should have been an FBI agent.
There you go.
But she's good at finding these little gems. And so she would tell me, "Hey, did you hear this guy's thing? It's exactly what you're working on today. And he talks about this."
Oh, absolutely. Another set of ears or another pair of eyes absolutely is invaluable. Yeah. Absolutely. So I got one question. It says, how do you make the caption file, Richard? So I use different programs, and I just I let the AI programs do the transcription. They go through, you send an audio file and they do it. And I always get 3 files. I get a SRT, a rich text document for just a text file, and then a Final Cut Pro XML file. I get all 3 of those once it's done transcribing, and I keep those with the audio. I'm very organized with that stuff. I keep it all in the master folder, in the audio folder. The transcriptions have their own folder. Text files have their own folder, so I can, and I name them as I go. So something that makes sense to me, not Final Cut Pro's weird naming convention that they use, dates, and it doesn't mean anything to me. I like to I might leave that information in the title, but I want to put something at the beginning that makes sense to me. Fred at breakfast or something, whatever. Aunt Matilda, whatever, that makes, sense to me so I can search for it and find it.
Yeah, cause that's the whole stuff beforehand, before you really get going, is I think what a lot of people, don't realize, that if you set that up beforehand, it just makes your project so much easier.
Yes.
So I did have one master folder too for everything that was in this movie. And then inside that master folder, it was like, all the different segments, the different interviews and stuff like that, and just all the audio files of who was talking, and then, music and.
Right. So you're from LA, right?
Originally from LA, yes.
When you did this film, where were you stationed?
San Diego.
San Diego. Yeah. So why Final Cut? I mean, California, everybody uses Avid. I hear that all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we'll get into this after, but we did use a post house, because remember, it was really just me doing everything. So
okay.
I would say at the end, I was like, well, I'm not going to do the final mix down. I'm not going to do the color correction, because those aren't my specialties.
Right.
So let's find a post house. And it was funny because we had been conversing back and forth. And then when we were ready to take it to the post house, he's like, okay, just send me your thing through, Avid, or if you use Premiere. And I said, oh no, I used Final Cut. And he said, Final Cut? Final Cut 7? And I said, no, Final Cut 10. And then he said, oh boy. So, we'll go back into that, but
okay.
Yeah. So, the only reason I went with Final Cut 10 is, as I said before, when I started doing the surf stuff, and I was doing everything in Final Cut 7, and then when 10 came out, I literally just jumped right into it. I didn't even hesitate. I was like, I'm just going to try it. And I started noticing right away that I could kind of, do meta tag all the different heats. And I was like, wow, if I could do this would be fast. And then in my camera, I was going, wow, what if I set up every heat ahead before it happens? And then I know the 2 guys that are in each heat, or the 4 guys that are in each heat. And now I have all those heats. And now when I get home, I could literally just load that up, and it'll all be like organized already. That is something that would take me almost a whole day to do. So I said, well, let's try it. I did it. And like I said, it went from being 3 days of editing up all night to 8 hours, and getting the same project done in 8 hours. In fact, when I sent it to the surf guy the first time, he said, oh, what's this? Is this like a demo or something? I said, no, it's the final project. And he goes, well, you usually send it to me on Tuesday morning. It's, Sunday night. And I said, yeah, it's done. And he kind of was like, okay. And then he watched it back, and then he said, wow, how did you do it that fast? Did you guys have people editing at the beach or what? I said, no, I'm using a new program. That's all I said to him.
Right.
So when I realized how fast Final Cut was, and how I could find stuff really easy and set up things like that, that's what sold me, because I knew, again, what I told you at the beginning, we had the deal up in Hollywood. Their deal was going to be, oh, we're going to have 4 editors for you. You're just going to come in and direct and tell them how the story goes. When that whole thing didn't happen, and I knew that I was going to be editing the project because we didn't have a budget,
right.
I said, wow, okay, Final Cut is, I think, the only thing that I can organize all this footage in, and me do it by myself and be able to find the stuff really quick. And I already knew that going from 7, that even 7, Final Cut 7, like, I couldn't have done it this fast and find stuff that fast. So that's why I went with Final Cut. And it turned out to be honestly, the best thing that I ever did, because I think it would have taken me, I'll be honest, I think it would have taken me almost another year if I had used something else to by myself. Now, if I had
Sure, sure.
three editors, um, then it's a different story. But by myself, I think it would have almost taken me another year to get through
That
it all.
that's a lot of work. So that's what I keep going back to. We got a comment from Scott Markowitz. It says audio engineers that I work with always prefer AFFs that I generate out of Extra Pro compared to AFFs generated out of Avid.
Yeah,
Did you use Extra Pro for audio?
we used Extra Pro to get the footage over to these guys at the post house, and it was here. So I'll go into that a little bit. They didn't know how to like transfer anything because they hadn't used 10, right?
Yep.
And they were almost telling me like, and of course I know you've heard this and other Final Cut guys have heard this, like, like it's almost a joke that you're using that. And then when I started to show them all the different things, because I had made all these different possibilities, like, well, maybe you guys want like a QuickTime file with all the different levels of what's in there, or maybe you want it this way, or so I made all of those, and then what I did was I took it to them, and they were looking at it going, wait, you could do this with Final Cut? I said, yeah. I said, in fact, here's Extra Pro, so all the audio came out through this, and they're like, oh, wow. And it was kind of funny. I was actually teaching them a little bit how to bring in all the stuff into Resolve and then even Avid. And so it was, my wife and I kind of like looked at each other and we were kind of laughing, because then I remember when the guy opened up the stuff, because what they ended up doing was they bought Final Cut 10 so that they could just see what I had. And I remember the guy opening it up and he went, what are all these different colors down here? And I said, oh, those are all the audio files, and they're all in their own lanes. And then he goes, oh, wow. And then I said, in fact, you can actually show the audio lanes where it's just, the voiceover, the music, the sound effects.
Right.
And so he started looking at that and he was like, that's impressive. I never knew Final Cut did that. And my wife and I were just laughing because we knew that that's kind of the consensus that, Final Cut doesn't do enough. And when they started looking into it, I think they were impressed with a lot of the stuff. But yeah, they use Avid up there. And so, that was a little bit, it took a little bit of jumping through some hurdles to get it.
Sure.
But it all worked out, and we were happy, and I think they learned something in the process as well.
Yeah. Anytime I talk to different editors in Hollywood and LA that use Final Cut, they always can show the people that use Avid. Sometimes they change their mind. Other times they don't, because people are hard-headed.
Right.
They have their own opinion and they're not going to change or whatever, whatever. I really don't have time to argue about stuff like that. I didn't get involved when Final Cut came out. Once in a while I'd jump in, and it'd always be just, nobody's going to change anybody's mind. But there are movies that are made. Your documentary's being made in Final Cut. The idea that they say you can't use it for a film, yes, you can.
Yeah.
They've had major Hollywood films done in Final Cut. You made a documentary on Final Cut. Other documentaries are made in Final Cut. It absolutely can be done.
Right.
Could it be made easier? Yeah, sure.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what 10.5 is going to do, right?
Yeah, we hope. We hope. I will talk about this too. I know that I was watching Ben. Is it Ben Olsen?
Yes.
Brad
Olsen. Brad
Olsen. So I was watching Brad, his little the short movie on Final Cut that he put up yesterday or the day before.
Yes.
And I know they were talking about there was a segment where they were talking about Final Cut, where Final Cut 7, you would take something and you would move it, and it would mess up your whole thing. And it was
a nightmare.
And I remember telling you about this, but I had done this surf project, and it was 2 hour documentary surf project. And I remember something at the very beginning. I said, I think I want to move this over here. And I did. I took it and moved it. And then when I watched the whole film, everything was out of sync just a little.
It was so aggravating.
Oh my. And I just remember going like, oh no. And it took me 2 days to go and fix it all.
Exactly.
So I fixed it all. And then when I went back and watched one final pass, I was like, oh man, there's just one little mistake in there. And I was like, most people might not even catch that. But, you as an editor, you going like, I know it's there.
Absolutely.
But I remember thinking, man, do I want to fix that little tiny thing and maybe ruin my whole project?
Duplicate that timeline first. That's what I would do.
Right.
Before anything like that.
Right.
That's absolutely. So so I co-edited that documentary with Brad Olson.
Oh, okay.
I was a co-editor on that. He was on Final Cut Pro Radio in the fall, but I think 2017. It might have been 2016. I don't remember. He was on Final Cut Pro Radio at the end. Somewhere in the conversation, I said, "Hey, if you need help editing, I'll give you a hand." And then we made contact after that. And for like the first year, he sent me a hard drive with all the raw footage on it, which was terabytes, of course.
Wow.
And I transferred it to my RAID and then ended up sending his drives back. And we worked remotely for a year. We had FaceTime calls back and forth talking about stuff. Absolutely. That was a good project because the first interviews that Brad did was at the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit. I'm going to say 2016, but it might have been 2017. We set up in one of the side rooms, had the side room set up, and did the first interviews there with Steve Martin and Philip Hodgetts and Gregory Clark and a bunch of people. Right. Ian Anderson was there from Australia, a friend of mine.
Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen with that this year. Don't know, with all the cancellations of everything.
Right. One of the things I was going to say is with Final Cut 10, I never ran into that problem about moving stuff. In fact, I was literally taking whole segments and I would move one whole segment. And, what we did with Final Cut 10 which was really cool is, how you can just you do your timeline, right? So then I would take one for each segment. And then you can just literally use that back arrow and click through the segments and go through and watch them. So they were all separate. But then at the end, what I would do is I would, make one full one, right? So that you can make the whole movie. Right. But even when I did that, I would do what you said. I would make a copy of it, right? So that if something went wrong.
That's the first thing I do, right? Absolutely.
But I noticed what I could do is when we would watch the movie, I'd go, man, that segment doesn't seem to fit right there. And I would literally grab one whole segment and just take it and move it.
Yes.
And then boom, it would fit right in there. Like I'd kind of nudge a space in there and get it in.
Yep. And
then kind of make sure everything was tightened up. And I'd play the whole thing and nothing was out of sync at all.
Nope.
And I'm not kidding you. I almost wanted to cry going, this is amazing. Like people don't even know how beautiful this is because
it absolutely. It's one of the strongest features of Final Cut. Some people don't like the magnetic timeline, but for doing that kind of stuff, there's no problem with knocking things out of sync. Right. It's just, it's hard to go to something else after working with Final Cut.
Yeah.
It really is.
I would think that would be really hard because, again, being able to take a whole segment, and we're talking, some of these segments were 20 minutes long, know? So to take a 20-minute segment and just decide to move it, halfway into the movie and drop it in there and nothing's out of sync.
Right.
Is, that's amazing. And so
there's one thing that not one thing, there's plenty of things I'd like to see Final Cut have. And one of the things that I really, really liked from Final Cut 7 is the ability to add one project into another project in the same timeline.
Right.
That would be nice. Now, we just got a comment from Tweaks123, and he says he makes compound clips of sections. It is so much easier to see the different parts of my videos with compound clips. Yes, but if you could add projects to another project, it would be even nicer. Here's one of the weird quirks of Final Cut, and I don't know why it's like this. You can scrub a compound clip in the browser. Of course, you can scrub a regular clip in the browser. You can scrub a multicam clip in the browser. And you can scrub a project in the share window, right? You can actually scrub the project,
right,
but you can't scrub a project in the browser. After 9 years, there's nothing, you can't scrub a project in the browser.
Right.
They used to have a project library. It's one of Bill Davis's favorite features they took out. At the bottom, at the timeline area, you would have a project library where you could actually scrub the project and go through it. And for some reason, you can't do that in the browser yet. I expect to see that, but it's kind of odd because you can scrub the project in the share window.
Yeah.
You bring your share window up and that little icon, you can take the thing and scrub right through it to see, make sure it's the right one or the lower thirds are right or whatever. But you can't do it in the browser for some odd reason. That's probably coming in 10.5 though. That's one of the.
Yeah, to me, like, people always ask me, well, I want to do a project, but I'm going to do it in, Resolve or whatever, Premiere. And then they always tell me, but, do you want to convince me to do it in Final Cut? Like, talk to me about it. And I'm like, no, I don't want to convince you because the truth is, use whatever you're comfortable with. Like, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, like I always tell people this, I taught a class on this, how we did the whole thing literally from using Final Cut to getting it to the, onto TV and everything.
Sure.
And I always tell people, I don't care what you use. The bottom line is, do you have a good story? And can you tell the story?
Yes.
Like, are you a good storyteller? Because there are good stories that I've seen ruined, and there are
absolutely
terrible stories that I've seen made amazing because you had good storytellers. And so can you do that? Can you make it something that people want to see? And that's the most important thing. I don't care what platform you're using. I just happen to like Final Cut because I thought it was the easiest to get stuff done and it was quick. And I was able to move stuff around. And I thought for me, that gives me more time to be creative. And instead of spending 2 days of trying to sync something back up.
Absolutely. So I don't spend a lot of time, I don't argue with people about Final Cut versus Avid versus Premiere. I never got involved with that. I let my friend Bill Davis do all that stuff. He was right there from the beginning, and he was, in the boards and arguing. So he can do all that. I don't get involved with that. However, here's the difference. The more somebody is a friend of mine, a personal friend, the more I will try to convince them. Then I will get involved and try to convince them two things. Don't shoot vertical videos and edit in Final Cut Pro 10. If they're friends of mine, the further they get away from that friend, category, the less I'm interested in trying to convince them of anything. But if they're a friend, I will fight for both of those things. Don't hold your phone vertically to shoot video and use Final Cut Pro 10. Absolutely, I'll do that. But other than that, I'm not going to argue about it.
Right.
Even on Twitter, people get in those ridiculous arguments.
Yeah.
Discussion is fine. Discussion is fine.
Sure. And I agree. Discussion is fine because, and there's things that Final Cut doesn't do that I'd probably go, I wish I could do this or whatever. I wish it had better audio, a better audio mixer or something. But for the most part, I think about it. I'm like, well, we did a 2-hour documentary that was on TV across the country, and it won some awards as well. And it played at, in fact, it was at the GI Film Festival. They asked us if we could premiere the movie, but it didn't. They ended up telling us at the last minute, like, hey, you can't win an award because KPBS, which is your sponsoring station, they're going to be giving out the award.
Okay.
And so it might be a conflict. And
I
I
see.
think they thought we were going to say, oh, well then pull it out of the film festival. And my wife and I were like, okay. So, I it's kind of funny. I used to be a coach. I coached for over 20 years.
Okay.
And I never cared about the award, right? I never cared about that. To me, it was always like, I got to just do my best work.
Yes.
Like all those things I think will come when you put your heart and soul into your project. And so I've never worried about, oh man, am I going to get an award from this? And so when they asked us, I just said, oh, I don't care. Just show the movie,
Sure.
They're like,
Sure.
oh, you're not upset that you're not going to be up for an award? I was like, I don't care about awards.
Right.
I mean, yeah, I think it's awesome that I win an award, right?
Sure. Sure.
It's great. And I love that. But I don't make the movie or do a project to win an award. I'd never coached to win an award. And, and I won a lot of championships in football and track and field and stuff while I was coaching, but I didn't care about those things. And then we also did for Branson. Branson has a thing that they do Veterans Week.
Right.
And same thing. They get thousands of films that come in. They do like a little film festival, and Scramble the Seawolves was one of them. And there's no awards there either for that. And I didn't care. I was like, hey, that's awesome. I want to. That was something that was amazing to me. So again, all done on Final Cut. I do also want to talk about something that I thought was important when we first started doing this. I was trying to figure out how could I get film from some of these guys who are 60, 70, and 80 years old.
Right.
And there's a few 90-year-olds as well. And I needed to get some pictures from them. And I had already had all this film, and I was thinking, oh man, I can't get all these, CDs of pictures too, because we're getting swamped here with all this stuff. So I went to Frame.io and I said, well, what if I could get these guys to just drag and drop stuff from their computer? And because I was getting stuff like this, I would call somebody and say, hey, Bill, do you have your pictures? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to send them. Then 3 weeks later, I'm calling them. Hey, Bill, you said you were going to send me your pictures. Oh man, I went to my storage, but couldn't remember why the hell I was there. I'll go get them today, and it could take me, 4 months or something to get these pictures. These guys were taking them and dropping them onto Frame.io from their computers. And at the beginning, I thought Frame.io was a little clunky, and man, they really just, props to them because they really fixed that thing up so it was working beautifully. And honestly, that's how we got a lot of our film, was people sending it through Frame.io.
Sure.
And then
sure. Absolutely.
And then from Frame.io right into Final Cut. And so that made the process really easy for us. And
we have friends over there at Frame.io, Patrick Southern.
Okay.
And Michael Cioni. Both of them have been on Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. They're both over there. And I know some other people over there too, but those two I've known for years.
Yeah, so that was a big help. And then we also used for some of the interviews that we did toward the end, we used Lumberjack to do our interviews, and then bring that into Final Cut. So that helped out as well. And at the very end, we used Kino, and just recently for a lot of my surf stuff, I've been using Kino.
Right. I like Kino.
Yeah, it's and there's a thing that I've asked a lot of people about, but not enough people knew about it, so I haven't gone to it. I watch it, and the stuff looks amazing, which is that Key Flow Pro.
Right, media asset management.
Yeah, so that looks amazing. And I know that's one of the things that I kind of look for from Final Cut is the collaboration to make it easier, I think.
Well, you named all the best ones. Lumberjack, yeah. My friend Philip Hodgetts and Gregory Clark. Yeah. Key Flow Pro, I have that one as well. And then Kino. The only thing about Kino that I wish they would incorporate is you can't import from an iPhone.
Yes.
doesn't show up.
Yes.
That's the only thing that's holding me back from updating, because I use my iPhone too much. I mean, this thing I use, this is the iPhone 11 Pro Max, and I use it. I just got the Moment case. And let me tell you something. I started shooting anamorphically with this, with an ND filter outside. There's no going back to 16:9. I'm sorry. When I see that footage and that great wide screen, it's like, well, 16:9 looks like vertical video now. What did they do to me? Right. So anytime I'm outside, in the daylight especially, it's very easy to click. You just click it right on. It's just like a quarter turn and it goes on the case.
Oh, wow.
So it's very easy to change on and off. You can use it on both the 2 times zoom and the regular lens. And then I have an ND filter that just goes on there. And I started doing that, and it's like, wow, absolutely. And now, obviously, it's not for everything, but for outside, it's fantastic.
Sure. I actually wanted to do a like some stuff with the iPhone, and kind of make maybe a channel or something like that.
Sure.
with just the iPhone, because it is incredible what you can do with that thing.
It is. It absolutely is.
I mean, who knows where it's going to go next, but yeah, absolutely amazing.
Well, I only update the iPhone when there's an improvement in video recording.
Right. If
it's incremental, I don't care. I had before this 11 Pro Max, I had a 6S Plus. So I didn't go to 6, 7, 8. I don't know where the heck 9 went, or 10. I didn't get any of those phones because I was already shooting 4K on the 6S Plus, which is the reason I got that phone itself.
Right.
And then when I saw the 11 Pro Max that had the 3 lenses, that had the improved audio, improved low light. The best lens on this is the regular lens. I call it the regular. They call it the wide, but to me it's just a regular lens. Then you have the ultra wide, which is the lowest quality. The f-stop is higher, and then the 2 times optical zoom is the next best. So I use the regular lens as much as possible because it's best image. But I use both. I use all 3 of them, especially in the sunlight. And here's one thing that is really interesting that I found. So I have Filmic Pro, and I have 3 or 4 other Video Pro apps on this phone that I bought over the years. This Pro, this Pro, this Pro, that Pro. And I find the native app frustrating in one sense. How many times, the native camera app, how many times have you heard these words? Audio is at least 50% of good video.
Right.
There's no audio meters on the regular camera app, and there's no audio controls on the regular camera app. So how important is audio to the regular camera app, whoever's developing that? You should have audio meters, and you should have a volume control, minimum. Those are the worst things. However, so far, I use the native camera app a lot because I can switch the 3 lenses while I'm recording.
Right.
I can go from regular to 2 times zoom to ultra wide in the same recording. I don't have to switch. I can do it, and I do that all the time, especially outside. So that has hooked me for that app. I want to see one of the other apps get that in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Really like that.
I agree. And I'm a big proponent of music because I told you originally when I started college, I was a music major.
Right.
And I was a drummer, and I had grown up playing the drums. And my dad was an amazing musician. He played the trumpet, guitar, piano, drums, bass. So he could kind of do it all. And, we always had music in our house. He had a band that we were always following around and doing, listening to when they were playing. So to me, no matter what happens with a project, like you said, I believe your audio and your music has to be captivating to really bring that audience in. And that's what we try to do. We didn't use any Vietnam era music in our documentary, which is pretty it's unique because you rarely see a Vietnam documentary without that.
Without 60s music, exactly.
Right. And a lot of the people were telling me, oh, man, I don't know if it's going to be good without that. And I said, well, what we're going to try to do is find music that really is moving, and there's parts in this that are really emotional. I said so. Um, I spent a lot of time listening to music and going through soundtracks. Again, it was really my wife and I almost doing the whole movie. Like I said, we had another editor come in for a few weeks. We had the post house that finished everything, and then we had camera guys that helped us shoot this. But for the most part, it was really my wife and I. So I had to go through all the music and listen to it, and that's a process in itself. But I actually love laying in the music too, because I think you can have a great story, great movie, but if the music doesn't kind of grab you,
Right.
then it can mess up a scene.
Absolutely. So what's your wife's name?
Shannon.
Want to give her credit, Shannon.
Yeah,
and now is
Shannon.
she doing? Have you got her trained to do any editing yet?
No, it was funny. We talked about this. My wife is, she's one of those people that'll, like, let's say I write something to somebody, and then, she'll say, "Oh, well, let me look at it." And then of course she fills it in with, the emotional part, right?
Sure.
She gets in and fills it in with the emotional part. And sometimes, like, I've written, this much, and then my wife will come in and it's now like this long.
Sure.
And I told her, what, you can't send them that. Like that's way too long. And so we talked about her editing, and she said, the problem I have is I'd probably, like, never want to cut anything out because I love that, or I might keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. And she said, and it might take us because it took us about 4 years to do everything from the thing up there with the guys up in Hollywood, getting all the footage, and then getting it and premiering it. And she said, it'd probably take us 8 years if I edited the project,
Well, she'd have to want to, first off.
Right.
I was just curious. So how many of the original Seawolves got to see this? How many of the originals?
I believe there were 2,500, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Original Seawolves. We premiered this on the Midway here in San Diego.
Okay.
On the deck of the Midway. So, like, you couldn't have had a better, premiere place. We had a giant, I think it was 45-foot screen.
Wow.
Yeah. Outside on the deck. And we had 1,100 people at the premiere.
Wow.
So that was that in itself. And none of these guys had seen it. They didn't know what to expect. And they had invited some, colonels and captains. And so I was pretty nervous because I was thinking, wow, if they don't like this, they're probably going to toss my wife and I overboard.
Right.
But when it ended, they gave us a standing ovation. And so my wife and I were like, oh, okay, hey, great. They liked it, and they were quiet at all the emotional parts, and you could actually hear people even maybe tearing up. They laughed at the parts that we thought were funny. And so we thought, oh, okay, we captured what we wanted to. And I believe now almost every Seawolf that's still alive has seen it. But believe it or not, it was probably maybe 3 months ago now, a guy called us up and he said, "Oh, I'm a Seawolf. I'm not active in the, association or anything." And somebody sent me this, a guy that I played golf with sent me this and said, "Hey, did you hear about your movie?" And he said, "So I wanted to order a Blu-ray. Can I order a Blu-ray?" Sure. So we sent him out the Blu-ray, and he watched it, and then he wrote us an email back saying, "Oh my gosh, I wish I would have gone to the premiere, and this was great." And Mike Rowe, from Dirty Jobs and Deadliest Catch, he did the voiceover, the narration for it. And so he wrote us back and he said, "Wow, great story, and man, Mike Rowe just topped that thing off. Having his voice in there, that just really kind of topped it off for me." He said, "So great job, thank you guys." And And so I believe almost every sea wolf out there has seen it, that's still alive. Like I said, I did feel a little guilty at one point because some guys had passed away. We did a story on a guy named Jim Walker and the guys that were in his debt. And literally after we did the interview, he was a Navy Cross recipient.
Okay.
And he passed away, I think, a month after we did his interview. So, that's one of the things that I look at with a piece like this is it's a historical piece. And,
sure.
Some of these guys are getting to that age where they tell their stories and, otherwise it could be lost to time forever,
Right. So I can't imagine hearing that standing ovation with those 1,100 people. That must have been absolutely something that's embedded in your memory forever. That must have been fantastic feeling.
It was a fantastic feeling because, again, even though they were watching it, I was like, wow, are these guys going to, what's their reaction going to be at the end? Are they going to just, yeah, hey, good job?
Right.
Yeah. And so to hear all that, it was absolutely amazing. And I know my wife and I probably both had tears in our eyes just going like, wow, we did it. We did this. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we got a question. Christopher Ashworth says, is there a public release of this film, which apparently there is if you have DVDs, Blu-rays. So where do people get those, get a copy?
They can go to www.scrambletheseawolves.com.
Okay.
And
there you go.
And there's a copy of the Blu-ray. You can see the giant poster in the back there.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, scrambletheseawolves.com, and we have our website up, and they can go and get copies. And yeah, a lot of people were telling me, "Oh, are you going to do Blu-rays? Why are you going to do Blu-rays? Like nobody watches Blu-rays anymore." But I also knew like you have to kind of know your audience, and I knew our audience was, guys that are in their,
sure,
late 40s all the way up to their, 70s that are probably going to buy this. And we've done really well. I mean, we're still selling them today, and the movie's been out now for over a year and a half.
I prefer Blu-rays myself. I mean, the same thing. If I like an artist, I want to buy the CD.
Right.
And I want a physical copy. There's certain things that I have Blu-ray copies of. I'm a big David Lynch fan, so I have all his movies on Blu-ray. I like the TV series Lost. I bought that entire box set on Blu-ray. Physically, wow. I have it. I don't have to worry about if it's going to be available at some point in the future.
Right.
It's there, and I like the Blu-ray. But so what was that process like, making the Blu-ray? Was that anything difficult, or was that pretty straightforward for you?
It was a little difficult because the post house kind of, they laid the actual, not the stamper, but I guess the
menu or something, or
the menu for it all. And then we took it to the the place, the guy that does the Blu-rays. But what he did was he made a stamper, and then he made us watch it. And he said, "You guys have to watch it to make sure there's no mistakes in it."
Right.
And
that was good of him. That's good.
So we did, and we watched it. And then here's something that happened. What is it? Producer's best friend?
Yes.
Okay, so I had gotten music from 3 different sources. And so at the end, when everything was done, I sent everybody that gave us music, I sent them a copy of Producer's Best Friend, basically where their music was. And I sent it off to this one guy, and he says, "Oh man, right here in this section, there's 15 seconds of this one song." And I said, "Yeah?" And he said, "Oh man, you can't use that." And I said, "Oh, that was under the thing of, what I was allowed to use." And he said, "No, I sold it to," I don't know who it was, one of the sports networks. And he said, "You got to rip that out." And I was going, Oh my God. Like we
Right.
literally burned the
Right.
Blu-ray already. And he said, no, man, you got to you got to pull that out. It's going to cost me like, if you don't, I mean, they're going to sue me for like, $1 million at least. And he said, that's what the contract says, that they can sue me for $1 million. And I said, oh my gosh. So I literally had to go back and pull that out. And then we had to go through the whole process again and make it a second time. It was a 3,000, I think it was about a $3,000 mistake, but I thank God for producer's best friend, because it could have been $1 million mistake.
Sure,
You
sure.
know?
But don't you think if you had gone to the sports network and say, look, I have this 15-second clip for Vietnam veterans documentary, can we please use 15 seconds? And then if we got to pay you whatever, $1,000, whatever, I mean, that could have been possible, I guess. It wasn't like it's a commercial release. I mean, it's commercial, but it's for the Vietnam veterans, so.
Right. I asked him about it, and he said, absolutely not. They literally stated in the contract that I could not even come to them with this.
Okay.
And I said, are you kidding me? They knew that this was going to happen. And he said, please,
That's fine. That's fine. You worked it out. You did a good job.
So I said, okay. Hey,
thank God the Blu-rays weren't mass produced at that point. That would have been a nightmare.
Oh, I would have really cried, because that would have been thousands of dollars beyond that. So, but producer's best friend, man, that thing was awesome, because we had to have all that information for TV as well. And so I would tell anybody who's going to do this, if you're trying to get it to TV, definitely use producer's best friend, because I sent that to every network that our network that we were using. And then what they did was they kind of forward that off to the other network. So that really helped us out.
Absolutely. So producer's best friend is also the guys from Lumberjack, right? Lumberjack Systems?
I believe so, yeah.
Philip Hodgetts and Gregory Clark. I think that's one of their products.
Super nice guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're the best. Both of them. I see them every year at the FCPX Creative Summit and at NAB, but this year there's no NAB, so I didn't see him. I've had Philip on the show before, multiple times. He's been on the show, so I've known him for years. They have some great products, but I don't know what's going to happen this year with, the spring I understand, NAB and stuff, and WWDC is, now virtual this year. I don't know what's going to happen. There's an NAB in the fall at New York, and there's IBC in Europe, which is like their version of NAB, and then there's the FCPX Creative Summit in November. None of those have been canceled yet, so we'll have to see how things go. My idea with the FCPX Creative Summit is this. We're right by Apple campus, right? Apple can develop some kind of a Final Cut Pro temperature check that we can all go through Apple campus and get checked for temperatures and any kind of symptoms before we go into the Creative Summit. It's only 150 of us. It isn't like there's 10 or 20,000. So let them start working on that now, Apple. Get a test so we can just walk over there before we go to the summit, and you can clear us to get to the Creative Summit this year. Because we're all in one hotel. It'd be, but hopefully, I don't know what's going to happen this year. But that's my favorite event of the year.
Well, and that's the crazy thing when you think about NAB is you have these, everybody coming from all over the world. And so,
yes,
that's probably.
Well, they said that the what's that consumer event they have in January?
Oh yeah, the like electronics or
the big consumer event. They said 100 people were there this year from Wuhan, China.
Oh wow,
100 people in January. That's what I read. That there's 100 people from Wuhan, China, at that event.
Wow.
In January. So.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, now I'm wondering.
CES.
Oh, CES. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm wondering what's going to happen too. I do these surf events, and the judges who I work with, they're all from different countries. And so I'm wondering what they're going to do for these surf events. How are they going to get around that? So be interesting to see. But yeah. Oh, you're. I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just got a comment that IBC was canceled.
Okay.
I checked earlier this week, and they hadn't made a determination. Let me just check that. IBC canceled. Let me check. Yes, that's confirmed. IBC 2020 is canceled. So there's another one. Of course, that's usually in September, something like that, still a little earlier. But those are gigantic events. IBC, NAB, they're,
Right.
70, 80,000 people, at least the NAB is. I don't know what IBC is. The first one that fell was the one South by Southwest in Austin, Texas in March. And right up to before the last week, they were saying they were going forward, with precautions. They have 120, 130,000 people show up for that over the weekend.
Wow.
And they lost, I don't know how many billions of dollars in local economy, 1 billion or something like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's crazy, crazy times. Now, I've been working from home since I quit the National Archives about 3 years ago. I've been working from home since then, and thank my girlfriend. She's been working from home for years and years and years. So we're both lucky and set up that way. And a lot of independent people are, but other people have been hit pretty hard. But I think, going forward, obviously post-production has changed. It's probably going to benefit me because when I used to go do work, a lot of times I'd be going into the site, to the edit suites in Washington or Baltimore or wherever. Now they're going to be more likely, hey, just get the hard drive and we'll work remotely. You stay at home and work, and I don't have to worry about parking and travel time and all that stuff. So I think it probably will benefit.
Yeah. Hey, come in here real quick. We can do a quick thing with my wife.
Shannon.
Just for quick. So this is
We
Shannon.
already know your name, Shannon. Hi. Thank you for helping on this great documentary.
Oh, thank you so much.
He can hear you through here.
Oh, I can't hear him though because you got him.
That's right.
Okay.
He said, go ahead, listen.
Hi there.
I said, how you doing? My name's Richard. I said, thank you very much for helping on this great documentary.
Oh my gosh. It honestly has been such a thrill. Not only watching Jeff go through everything that he went through from beginning to end, but what it means for the veterans. It's just absolutely life-changing for them. And it's been a true labor of love. And I'm proud to be a part of it in just a little bit.
Well, apparently you're not a little bit. Jeff's been talking about you quite a bit. Now, one of the things I told Jeff, I can't imagine when you were on that ship and 1,100 people gave you guys a standing ovation. I can't imagine the thrill of that.
Yeah, that was absolutely indescribable. That entire evening, it's a little bit of a blur, but we had talked about how we wanted to go up to the podium before we introduced the movie, and we were going to wear life preservers. Worst case scenario, they threw us overboard.
Sure.
But it was so important to us, especially as Jeff was editing, that we got it right. The worst thing we could have done is cut corners or not pull skimped on some parts of their story. And when they stood and, hundreds of them approached us after the screening saying we got it right, then, it just kind of filled our cup up. It made it all worth it.
That's one of those events you remember for the rest of your life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, and I think the neat thing, I was in a meeting of my own when you and Jeff were talking, but my dad, who is a sea wolf, he hadn't even seen the movie. So it was a surprise for him, and we can honestly say we stood up there, and not one of them knew what to expect. They knew that we were going to protect and respect their story, but they didn't know what to expect, including my own dad. So.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much for helping.
Oh, you're welcome. And it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I'll give you back over to Jeff.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There you go. Fantastic. She put up with you during all that time. That's great.
Yeah, she did. I will say, like for 2 years, I think I was probably working 14 to 16-hour days for 2 years. Again, if we had a team, it might have been a different story, but we
Sure.
didn't. But we have a couple other projects that we're working on, and this time I said I'm only going to do it and if we have the right budget, so that we can actually have a team. And
Sure.
I don't kill myself.
And make them use Final Cut, right?
That's right.
The editors have to use Final Cut.
Hey, we had the editor that I had come in for, I think I told you, she came in for about 7 weeks, and she came from Premiere. And when I was showing her how to use Final Cut, I remember at first she was like, "Oh man, I can't get used to this magnetic timeline thing. It's just crazy." So I was showing her how to get out of it and stuff, and I could hear her. When I was in the other room, I could hear her yelling, "Oh God!" But she caught on to it really quick, and I would say maybe after a week, she was pretty comfortable with it. But the thing that she kept telling me was being able to scroll through footage when she was doing that, and she was like, "I want this. We don't have this. I want this. I can't believe how fast I could go through and find stuff." She's like, "This is absolutely a game changer right here." And I said, that's what I was trying to tell you. That's why I said, that's why I did it, and that's why I'm using Final Cut. And she, after it ended, her time had ended, she said, "Well, at least I know Final Cut now, and maybe now I'll look into doing some projects. If one comes up, maybe I can, do a project in Final Cut now." So yeah, I think people that don't use it, or when they come from another editing platform, it's just different,
Well, if I was a youngster and just starting out in the business, I would learn a couple of them. I don't know, maybe Avid, but Final Cut, absolutely. $299 for 9 years. It's all it's cost us for 9 years.
Right.
And if you're a student, you can get Final Cut, Logic, Motion, Compressor, and Main Stage for $199. So It's worth just taking a class to get that discount for those applications. Just register for a class at your local community college if you're not doing anything, and you could get all 5 of those pro apps for $199, or if you're an instructor as well. So instructors can get that price as well.
Yeah,
and absolutely. The other thing is you can get iTunes gift cards. When you see them on sale every once in a while, 15, 20% off, you can use those to buy Final Cut as well. But no updates for charges so far. They reserve the right to charge at some point, but so far there's been no update for any of those apps, no charge for the updates for any of those apps. So 10.5, what would you like to tell Apple that you needed when you were doing this documentary? What kind of a feature or features?
I think for me, definitely a better audio mixer.
Okay.
Just because that's something that, like I said, I truly believe in. I know a lot of people. In fact, an audio mixer for sure.
Yes.
I think that would really help out a lot. There's a surf movie that I watched one time and it was narrated by Russell Crowe.
Oh, yeah.
And when I had watched the beginning of this movie, because it was done in Australia, when I watched the beginning of it, the footage was horrible. I remember it was like like high 8 footage.
Right. Right.
A lot of
it
was high 8 footage. And I was going like, oh my God, I don't know if I could sit through and watch this. Well, 5 minutes into the movie, you forgot how bad the footage looked, because the music was really done nicely, and then Russell Crowe's narration was
right,
and the story was done so well. Like, you started getting into it, and you forgot how bad the footage looked. Where I think if it was the other way around, I think if the footage looked amazing but the audio was horrible,
right,
you would be disturbed.
No, absolutely. People will always forgive bad video over bad audio. Bad audio just irritates people. I know it does me.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw another surf film, and same thing. It was the footage was probably the most amazing footage I had ever seen from a surf movie, but the music didn't match up to anything. It was just like they had taken music and just thrown it in there.
Well, I've seen that happen. Yes.
Yeah, and it really ruined the whole film. And I felt bad for these guys because they had, like I said, probably the most amazing footage I had ever seen surf wise.
Right.
But the music was just horrible and the audio was bad. So yeah,
you'd like to see a mixer, better audio controls in Final Cut. I absolutely agree with that. I mean, I've been, they had a mixer in 7 of sorts. I mean, it was an okay mixer. It wasn't phenomenal, but yeah, I missed that. I mean, all this time, 9 years, we don't have a master volume control in Final Cut.
Right.
No way to, no master volume control. It seems, yes, I know all about the compound clips. I know that. You just don't have a master. You don't have a master volume control. You just don't have it. So I'd like to see definitely better audio. What else would you like to see? Because 10.5, look, Final Cut Pro 10.4 is 29 months old right now. Yeah. 29 months. That's really, really old. It's like grandpa level NLE. So look, they released Logic 10.5 10, 11 days ago.
Yeah.
I expect Final Cut Pro 10.5 to be coming between now and WWDC. I'd be unpleasantly surprised if we don't see it between now and WWDC. Now, interestingly, this year, WWDC is on June the 22nd. Final Cut Pro's 9th birthday is on June the 21st. Wow. So between now and then, I don't think it'll be out tomorrow, but who knows? Yeah. And it usually is not out over the weekend. So if we don't get it tomorrow, which is Friday's not, I mean, they can do it any time, but Friday seems like an odd day. Yeah. So usually Monday, Tuesday are the days that I look for it, but we'll see.
Yeah. I would say maybe even something that's an easier, like I know you can do collaboration and there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but maybe something that was like, I kind of like how Resolve, you can kind of, 2 people can be working on it at the same time. Right. Something like that. If it was, if they added that in there, I think that would really change the game with Final Cut. And I know you can, copy the library and send it to somebody and all that. And there's, I know there's a couple new things that I just watched recently that you can do collaboration.
Post-lab.
Yeah, post-lab.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, but to me, that's the biggest things. Like, I think there's a lot of great things in Final Cut that people don't really, unless you dive in deep and really start doing a project, major project that people don't even know it does.
That's right. I have people just this last week that they don't know about the comparison viewer, where you can have 2 windows side by side and compare, match color. With each one has their own scopes and everything. So, yeah.
So those are the things that I'd like to see. I mean, I'm sure there's little things here and there, like as I'm working in it, that I'd go, oh, wait a minute. If I had that,
sure,
that would be better. But I do like how you could take, because one of the things that I did was when I made all these keywords, and then I would go back to find stuff, and your keywords are highlighted, right? You have that little box around them. Yep. So you already know there might be a big clip, but you already know the clip that you're going to go through because it's highlighted with the yellow box. And so I would just click on that and then scrub through it. Yep, this is it. Boom, drop it in. And, just so quick. Instead of having to go through the whole clip again, you just have that keyword right there. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know you're on Twitter. Are you on very much? Do you do social media at all?
I do a lot of social media on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
I'm not on Twitter as much, even though I do post up some stuff on Twitter.
Okay.
But I'm not on it as much. And then, like I've even just recently got on what are the
Twitch TV or something?
Yeah, Twitch, and the other one, what's the
Or not
dance?
Twitch TV, the TikTok.
TikTok. So I just got onto TikTok, but
So explain to me Instagram. I have an account there. All my social media is the same. Richard Taylor TV, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. But I'm not sure what to do on Instagram. I mean, I post mostly videos.
right. Well, that's what I post up is videos. Sometimes, like I actually just did like a little promo for Scramble the Sea Wolves because because for like Monday I know there's a lot of veterans and stuff that'll be doing parades and everything. So I posted that up, and we did get some sales from it. So I know it works.
Well, that's a good point. Monday's Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Thank all the veterans. All the veterans. Absolutely.
Thank all your veterans, because even like it's kind of funny because I did this, Vietnam documentary, and everybody always tells me, oh, so, they think I'm an advocate of war, and I'm like, oh,
nobody's an advocate of war.
Yeah, I said, especially after you interview these guys, you find out what a hard life they've had, after doing all this. So yeah, but I'm not. I'm my thing is I just want to tell stories, right? And if somebody has an amazing story, I want to tell that story.
Yep.
And I have to like really love the story to do it, because I've been approached with a lot of things after we did this, and I was like, I'm
the same way.
Yeah.
If I have a passion for something, then I'm interested in it.
Yeah. So I told you we're working on a track and field documentary as well. And that's something that I have a passion for, because you ran track, I ran track. Right. So, that's something that I want to continue to pursue with that. So
my latest sports endeavor is boxing. I've always wanted to take up boxing. So unfortunately, I started right before the pandemic.
Oh, really?
So I've had to, gyms in Maryland are closed, but I have boxing equipment downstairs, and I do stuff down there. Try to keep, whatever until we can get back together.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I, we, like right after we got married, we spent, she didn't do it as long because she ended up hurting her back, but I think I spent 2 years doing, almost like it was mixed martial arts, and a lot of boxing, a lot of grappling and stuff. And we did that together for a while, like I said, until she ended up hurting her back. And I had done that when I was younger. I had done some, mixed martial arts and stuff. So
I did too, actually. Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, I like it. And
I'm not doing any kind of competitive boxing. I'm not interested in getting hit, but I've always liked the art of it.
Right.
The art of the boxing part. I've always liked that. And apparently my grandfather was a bare knuckle boxer, from what I understand.
Wow.
He did it part-time on weekends to make money. A tough way to make money, but apparently that's what he did. So I've always liked that. And I also want to take up archery. This bucket list of things I want to do, and I want to take up archery, and then I just started into boxing. So,
one of the things that was on my bucket list was to go to Nashville. And my wife and her dad both were born in Illinois. And so we wanted to go back and premiere the movie in Illinois. And we did that. I think it was last September, August, I think, maybe August.
Right.
And we went back and did that. And then at the end of the trip, her cousin owns a bar in Kentucky. So we drove to Kentucky and we stayed the night over at her aunt's house and went to the bar and everything, and the brewery. It's a brewery there. And so we did that. And then we finished off our trip in Nashville. And my wife and I had the best time there. I mean, that's of course something that is great when you do stuff like this. You do movie screenings or premieres and stuff. You get to travel around and meet all kinds of different people, and that's something I've always loved. So yeah, I got that one off my bucket list. And
One of the other ones that I had on my bucket list that I recently got was my ham radio license. So
wow.
when I was a little kid, I had one. When I was at single digits in grade school, I had a ham radio operator who he was a film projectionist in Washington, D.C. by trade, but he would also just happen to be a ham radio operator, and he took me under his wing, and I got my first novice license in those days, Morse code and stuff. And right before, I think it was February, I got my ham radio license, KC3 RTV. Once again, RTV, it's a vanity license. It's Richard Taylor TV.
Right.
Kilo Charlie 3 Romeo Tango Victor is what my call letters are. So I have that. So that's one of the things I checked off. Boxing's another one, and then I want to do archery. Now, when I say archery, it's not for hunting. I'm a big animal advocate, so I don't do that. I have nothing against people who do hunting. That's not the point. Right. I want to learn. Since I've been a little kid, I've always liked the bow and arrow. So I want to learn that skill. And there's a couple of groups around here that will they have, things set up for that. So I'm going to take that up too once things get back to normal. Yeah. Whatever that's going to be.
Yeah. I've got it. I've been really blessed. I guess I would say that I've been blessed because I've been able to do a lot of things. I had a DJ company. I was teaching right out of college, but I had a DJ company that I started right out of high school. And then when I moved to San Diego, I thought, I'm going to give that up. And just got a phone call from some guy, and he was looking for a DJ for these big parties that he did.
Sure. So
I started doing that, DJ'd some of the biggest nightclubs. In fact, we had the biggest nightclub still ever in California. We were getting in about 3,500 people every Saturday night. Yeah, it was huge. So did that. I coached football, track. Those are all things that I wanted to do in my life. I worked for the Pro Surfing Tour. That's something that I wanted to do. So I've traveled all over the world in all these different spots, and I've been able to surf and meet some of the, greatest surfers on the planet. So I feel blessed that I've been able to do a lot and crossed off a lot of things on my bucket list. But there's still a few things that I want to do. My wife and I were just talking about going to Niagara Falls, and so I've
been there once as a child. Yes.
Okay.
It's amazingly overwhelming how grand and how big that place is, and definitely go to the Niagara Falls Museum.
Okay.
As a child, it's very scary. They have some of the barrels that people went over the falls actually there. And they had the stories about who succeeded and who didn't succeed. It was kind of dark when I went there, but yeah, absolutely. Anything else, Jeff, before we sign off here?
I would just say, to people, if know what your goal is when you're going to put something together, and you can see here, no matter what, we have, I think, 4 of these notebooks like this. Take notes on everything. Don't just count on Final Cut or whatever platform you're using to tell the story. Do the research. Like I said, look at different avenues from printed to, somebody reading a book and finding something to looking up things at a computer. Print stuff out so you can go through it, because it's a culmination of all that combined that helps you tell the story. Because no matter, again, to me, the bottom line is no matter what you do, story is still the king. Story is still the king, because if you don't have a good story, I don't care how great you edit or what you edit on, it's going to be hard to get that moved beyond. So
what do you want to say to the Apple Final Cut Pro team? Because they watch these. Everything you want to say to them? Great job, fellows, gals, and guys.
Yeah, great job. I love Final Cut. I know we've talked about it, so many times, how much it's been a pleasure to use Final Cut, and I'm excited to see what they have coming for the upgrade.
I am too.
Because
I am
it's
too.
it's like you said. It's like a little kid in the candy store. You turn on your computer like, today is it there?
Right. Well, I put up an article. It says waiting on Final Cut Pro 10.5, and the graphic was Hannibal Lecter in the glass cage, just sitting there, stoically waiting.
Right. That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Let's see here. What did she say here? My wife texted me something. She said, "Don't let the size of your team prevent you. Just one foot in front of the other." Because we were a 2-person crew, and so
Right.
yeah. I mean, like even in the surf industry, when I started, I was trying to figure out how to kind of get in because, it was kind of already convoluted with a lot of people working in it. So I decided, well, I don't see anybody doing women's stuff, so maybe I'll go into the women's side and kind of come through the back door, right?
Sure.
Get my way in there. And that's what I did. And here I am. I've been doing it now for well beyond 20 years. And I'm, like I said, I'm doing stuff with the Pro Surfing Tour, and people always ask me, "Oh, can I carry your bags on your next trip?" Or
Sure.
just joking around my friends and stuff. So
Sure.
yeah, just make sure, do it with your heart. And I think whatever people do, as long as you're doing it with your heart and soul, you can't go wrong with that.
And how can people contact you on social media? Is Twitter the best way, or Instagram's the best way?
Probably Instagram is what I look at mostly. And our Facebook. On Facebook, I'm just Jeff Arballo. And again, my last name is Arballo.
Right.
And then on Twitter or on Instagram, I'm actually j.arballo.films.
Okay.
And I ended up doing the two different, like, we have Arballo Entertainment, which is what, we do all our movies on. But I did
Sure.
Arballo Films too, because I wanted to kind of leave the movies in one aspect, and then
Sure.
all my sports action stuff goes under J. Arballo Films.
Absolutely.
So that's how we do it.
I have everything is open with social media except for Facebook. My Facebook page is mostly family and friends, but it's also has to do with animal rescue, has to do with music, has to do with arts. It's not so much video productions on the Facebook, but everything else is YouTube, Instagram. Well, Instagram I don't do hardly anything, but because I don't know what to do, because the videos have to be small, right? Short. I don't do short videos.
Oh, so here's what you could do on Instagram. If your videos are longer than a minute, you actually have what they call, I think it's like ISTV.
Right.
And so
IGTV.
IGTV. So yeah, you could post them up there, and you can have, a video that runs, I don't know, I guess an hour or something.
Really? And then link it back to your Instagram account?
Yeah, and it'll actually go onto your Instagram account. But it'll go through that IGTV. So
there you go.
Yeah. So
I have it, but I never knew what to do with it. I put a couple of pictures up once in a while because I'm also. We talked about track. I run in the mornings. Every morning I run usually 6-7 days a week, just 2 miles.
Right.
Just I get up and feed the cats, make coffee, check email or whatever, and then I go out for a run. I went out for this morning. I'm not just a jogger more than anything.
Right.
I want to make sure my knees and stuff don't give out on me. I like running too much. So.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff. Thank you very much for coming on. We've been on for an hour and 55 minutes. I know it seems like only 30 minutes, but I think we've covered everything. And I definitely want to say thanks to the Final Cut Pro team. They are some of the best for making this great product. Everybody is very anxious to see what you have for version 10.5. Or if it's 10.4.9, whatever, but the next version with features. Everybody's patient. Most of us are patiently waiting. Scott Markowitz says, thanks, guys. Very interesting. Thank you, Scott.
And Richard, send me your address, and we'll send you a copy of Scrambled
Excellent.
Seawolves.
I can't wait to see it. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Richard. I enjoyed talking with you, and I hope people got some stuff out of this. Like I said, you know, and if they have any questions, they can contact me in any way, and I'll try to help anybody out, because that's, again, I came from the teaching world, so my goal is to really help people out. And I was a coach for in fact, I actually have students that I still talk to, and I haven't been teaching now for our coaching for 12 years, 13 years.
Right.
So
scrambletheseawolves.com is where people want to go if they want to order the DVD. And there's probably they can contact you on there as well, that page.
Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you the next time on Final Cut Pro Radio TV Live. Thank you.